But what we see as a trend is really two things in Canada: the value trend, which has been part of the reason that the large LPs haven't been able to really perform very well, and then the second trend is really premium.
Hey there, Midas Letter subscribers, viewers, traders, and investors. My guest today is a regular feature on our show. Bruce Campbell joins us. He's the president and portfolio manager of StoneCastle Investment Management. Bruce, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's so good to see you again, Bruce. How's the pandemic holding up for you?
Well, I mean, I'd like it to just be over, but I think everyone's probably in the same boat, right? So it looks like we're getting closer. I mean, obviously the numbers out of the US are promising. Hopefully we can follow through here in Canada soon.
Bruce, I see that you recently became the Chief Investment Officer for Cannabis Growth Opportunity Corporation. Can you tell us a bit about how that all came about and what exactly you're doing with that company?
Yeah, I've been involved with that right from the get-go, but they just recently did a bunch of changes as far as officers and things like that. So when he originally started the company, that was the position I was sort of going to be in, and then they had it as a different position of public portfolio manager, and then they've just recently changed it again. So there's been a few changes going on there with new management, but effectively it's a publicly traded company. And we go and invest in the cannabis sector, both on the private side and on the public side. StoneCastle manages all the public portion of that portfolio.
Okay. And so what has been the performance of the portfolio in this last year?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a year ago to today, things have been quite strong. If you look at it, kind of in the last 6 months, they've been really strong. So we really saw the cannabis market bottom in kind of that September timeframe of last year. Started to build a bit of a base, and then really in November, December, just really took off. We had the high, back in the middle of February. It's pulled back a bit from that high, and just been sort of consolidating here in sort of the last few months.
Mm-hmm. And so, what are your top holdings in the portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the top holdings, we've got sort of a number of different areas. So Vibe Growth, which is one out of California. They they have a dispensary operation as well as cultivation and manufacturing. So we're one of our top picks as far as size goes. Curaleaf, we continue to own a good sized position in Curaleaf in our funds. And that's obviously one of the biggest and been executing quite well. Vext is another. They're in Arizona, again, another smaller producer. And, they're really, both with Vext and Vibe, they really trade under what the market recognizes as far as valuation for a lot of the bigger ones. And then, sort of continuing on with that theme, Lowell Farms is another. They're a producer in California, and they're mostly in cultivation. They're doing a little bit of manufactured product, but that's more recent for them because they did this merger between Indus and Lowell. Lowell had all the products, and Indus had all the cultivation, and they joined those two together. So, yeah, those are some of the bigger ones in the positions in the funds.
Oh, great. So I'm curious, most of the asset managers that I've been speaking to in the cannabis sector over the last year have almost entirely been focused on the US MSOs. So I'm curious as to what attracted you to GTEC, who is decidedly Canadian, and how are they managing to outperform? I'm assuming they're performing well for you. How are they managing to outperform other Canadian names?
Yeah, what we've seen, there's kind of two things going on there. One is in the US, those numbers have been really stellar. I mean, we've seen, revenue growth of, kind of 200% over the last couple of years, and EBITDA growth that in a lot of cases is even higher. In Canada, it's been a completely different story. If you look at the large LPs in Canada, their numbers really haven't been that strong. They've seen some revenue growth, not as much as you would have expected considering the growth in the Canadian market, but their EBITDA has really not been that strong at all. And in a lot of cases, it's still negative. But what we see as a trend is really two things in Canada: the value trend, which has been part of the reason that the large LPs haven't been able to really perform very well. And then the second trend is really premium. And so a lot of these premium producers, and in this case, GTEC, they have a product where they're getting a premium price. So they're getting, kind of in that $13 to $15 per gram versus the value, kind of in that $3.50 to $5.50 range. So they're getting a lot more for it. And yet their inputs to grow it aren't significantly different than what it would be to grow the value brand or value cannabis. So their margins are a lot higher. And right now, most of the premium companies, like somebody like GTEC, as soon as they can produce a crop, it goes out to the provinces and it's pretty much off the shelf. And then, people are waiting again for that next crop to come in.
Okay, so the practice of targeting the premium cannabis consumer has actually paid off for them.
It has, yeah. And I mean, that's where, obviously if you go sort of back to the legacy black market, that was, there was obviously a segment there that, people would notoriously go to. That term BC Bud obviously came from that, right? There was a, sort of different strain and different varieties that people specifically wanted from their dealer. Well, now obviously as that black market's going away, it's the same, that cannabis connoisseur is really wanting that premium brand. And now, they can obviously do it probably with even more consistency in these smaller operations than a big guy could, or in a lot of cases the black market could.
Sure. To what extent is the black market still having a negative impact on Canadian retailer sales? Is it as strong as it used to be, or is it actually incrementally eroding as a result of the existence of the licensed market and probably law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different factors that are going on there. Probably the biggest, though, from what the feedback that we get, is really the pricing. So, when the Canadian cannabis market first went legal, you were looking at sort of $8 to $10 per gram by time, the government had their taxes and the producers got their money. And that's now gone down. You're seeing, sort of in that 350 to 550 range now, which competes a lot closer to the black market. And so as a result, from a convenience factor, people are now, looking at the legal market versus the black market. At the same time, there's been a whole new consumer that have come in as well. People who probably hadn't used cannabis in a number of years. That's probably more so on some of the extracted product than necessarily on dried flower. So it's a combination of the two. And then, law enforcement, I don't think has really stepped things up as much as they probably could have or needed to. But, just as the evolution of pricing comes out, it's just easier for people to gravitate towards the legal market.
Sure. And is that contrasted with what's happening in the United States very much? Is there a black market impact on the retailers in the U.S.?
It depends on where it is. State by state, it certainly can. So California looks very similar to what it did in Canada. So, California is an unlimited license market, had a huge black market prior to them going rec legal. And, it took a lot of time, and it still is a big part of their market is the black market. And it's taking time to get, the legal market up sort of to speed as far as cultivation capacity goes, but also, sort of shutting down those black market dispensaries. Because much like, was out in here in BC, there was tons of black market dispensaries. Same thing in California. That's starting to go away now, thanks to law enforcement and regulation. And the legal market is starting to grow and really come on strong, both in Canada and the US, though. I think that there's a legal market that probably serves, overseas markets, right? And then state by state in the US, it depends on where you go. So, some of the states are very strong now on the legal sales, and they, in a large part, probably didn't have a ton of domestic black market cultivation. They were really kind of importing from California.
Interesting. So then do you expect that the the improving climate in the United States with the Biden-Harris administration is going to result in a national uncriminalization, if not full regulation?
Well, certainly that's the expectation. Just the timing is the thing that's up in the air, right? Does that happen, this year? Does it happen, this term for the president? Most people expect that it will happen this term at some point in time. And then the discussion really centers around what level will that be? Will it be just strictly a decriminalization? Will it be a federal legalization? Does the FDA get involved? Do they reschedule, reclassify the drug in the US so that it is federally legal? Is it still left, kind of the States Act where each state is in charge of their own regulation, or is it become, fully federally legal? The one thing that we know though is that, the tax revenue that each of these states is looking at, and the potential is huge. In some states, you've now seen where cannabis has overtaken alcohol, Colorado being one of those examples. And of course, the tax revenue is huge. With everything that's happened with COVID, they're going to be constantly looking for ways to increase that tax revenue. And, you just look at the New Jersey, New York example. New Jersey, voted to have it federally, or not federally, state legal on a recreational basis in the election, and then it wasn't too long after that New York moved ahead with their own legislation to make it legal. And that's just a function of if they had it legal in New Jersey but not in New York, people would just gone across a bridge or a tunnel, got their cannabis, paid their tax in New Jersey, and then came back into New York to consume it, and New York would have been out of all that tax revenue.
Sure. Well, Bruce, that's a fantastic update. We're going to leave it there for now. I'm going to come back to you in due course, and we'll have this conversation again. I wish you the best. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. Bye for now.